Okay, heroes, we're back. Again, if you do not know how to buy or sell stock, you need to go back to the beginning of this section so you can actually know how to do that. If you don't have an account, if it's not funded with the right amount of money or the correct amount of money, if you don't have the type of permissions that you want, you need to go back. You need to go back and you need to figure out how to set up your account the right way, and we have content about that in the videos above. And at the same time, you need to be able to go find out how to buy and sell stock. But if you have your account, if it's set up the right way and you know how to buy and sell stock, you can do this setup. So I call this the best week setup, and this is going to be kind of a quick one. I was sitting around during the holidays last year, and I saw that the week of Thanksgiving and the week of Christmas really were very, very powerful. So I wanted to understand if that was something that was an anomaly or something that happened a lot. And again, just like every single one of our setups, every single one of our strategies, we take what we hear, we take what we see, we take what we think, and we go put the numbers to the test. We go put the setups to the test based off of pure numbers and pure data. So I go out to the exchanges, I buy the data from the exchanges, and it allows me and my team to go ahead and crunch that data to be able to actually give you guys actionable setups based off of that data. So this study, we're actually going out and trying to see which is the best week of the year for stocks. And the way we did this was we went back from 1970 to present. So almost 50 years of data. With almost 50 years of data, that is a very high confidence in terms of the results. It is not curve fitted when we have that much data. We're not structuring it in a certain way to have a result in our favor. This is large enough sample size so that we know based off the numbers everything looks pretty good. And obviously if we see that the numbers work for the last 50 years, it doesn't necessarily mean they're 100% going to work the exact same way moving forward. They might work worse, they might work better, but it gives us the confidence that, okay, I have seen the setup, I know what the setup is. It's a very simple way to find a setup. After I have seen a simple setup, I know what the numbers tell me. So, hey, I have a lot of confidence. I know what the setup is. I saw the setup, and I have the confidence that the numbers tell me that this is exactly what I should be doing. I can move ahead with it. So this study, to find out what the best week of the year is 50 years of data. And what we did was we did it in the S&P 500. Again, the S&P 500 is the number one index in the world. It's an index because its price reflects a basket of 500 primarily US based stocks. So we have agricultural companies, technology companies, consumer staple companies, healthcare companies, all in the S&P 500 index, and the price of the S&P 500 reflects all 500 of those stocks. That gives you a very good indication of the overall stock market in general. So when we say S&P 500, we can use the term S&P 500 and the stock market interchangeably. And the same thing goes when we say the stock market. We can use the stock market and the S&P 500 interchangeably. So when we talk about the market or S&P 500, we're talking about the exact same thing. So what we did was we tested out the following weeks to see what percentage of the time they were positive or negative and to what extent. Now, let's kind of talk about what we did here. The first week we tested it, and we guessed these 6 weeks based off of just our gut. And remember, we go off our gut, we go off our feel, we go off of what the professionals tell us, and then we go in there and we look at the numbers to be able to tell us what is actually going on. So what we did was we surmised, we guessed that the first week of the year could potentially be the most profitable week of the year. The reason we tested that is because new money coming into the market the first week of the year. We also checked the first week of the summer being a profitable week. And the reason we tested it is because everyone goes away for the first week of the summer. There's a lot of commerce going on, and typically if there's a lot of commerce and consumer purchasing going on, that could potentially be a profitable week as well. The last week of the summer, I actually don't remember why we tested this out, but whatever. The week of Thanksgiving. So we test the week of Thanksgiving because that Friday happens to be Black Friday. And with Black Friday comes a lot of people shopping. And if people find out that a lot of people are shopping, a lot of people are consuming and spending their money, maybe that's good for the market too. And very similar for the week of Christmas. A lot of people are doing their shopping that last week of Christmas. Consumption leads to companies doing well, and also at the same time, the price is going up. And finally, the last week of the year, something that happens during the last week of the year is typically called window dressing. Now, what is window dressing? Window dressing, if you give your money to a hedge fund, if you give your money to a hedge fund, that hedge fund doesn't have to tell you throughout the entire quarter exactly, or the year exactly, what they have owned. They have to do it by the end of the quarter and the end of the year. So what they do, let's say Amazon is up very, very big for the year. What they'll go ahead and do is they'll buy it in that last week of the year. Even though they didn't hold it for all the other 51 weeks of the year, they'll buy it that last week of the year so that they could tell their investors when they have to actually show it that they were a shareholder of Apple. So they look smarter than they actually were. So that's the concept of window dressing, and that's why we thought that maybe the last week of the year was a profitable week. So again, we tested the first week of the year, the first week of the summer, the last week of the summer, the week of Thanksgiving, the week of Christmas, and the last week of the year to figure out if any of these were consistently profitable and to what extent. Now remember, it's very, very important to understand why we're doing the things we're doing here. We're giving our best guesses, our educated guesses, and then we're putting it to the test over 50 years. So if we find something that does work here, again, we have the confidence that it's backed by 50 years of data. So if one of these weeks, let's say the first week of the year, happens to be consistently profitable and for a legitimate profitability, it's not an anomaly. It's not atypical because it's backed by 50 years of data. A lot has gone on in that 50 years to make it a very, very random sample size. We've had market melt-ups, we've had market meltdowns, we've had wars, we've had terrorist attacks. We have a lot of things that allow this 50-year sample size to not be curve-fitted at all. So let's check out the results. So we could see right here, first of all 6 of these weeks were profitable more than they were not profitable. Okay, that's great. That's a great one off the bat. At the same time, we do have a little bit of a winner, but let's go through this list from top to bottom. So the first week of the year is profitable 53% of the time for an average of 0.27% gain on that week. By the way, there are ways to take advantage of something being profitable 53% of the time for this type of gain. There are absolutely ways to take advantage of that. So that is a very, very nice one. The first week of summer is profitable 51% of the time for pretty much no money, so we can go ahead and cross that one out. The last week of summer, while it's profitable 58% of the time, it really is pretty much profitable for nothing, so we can kind of cross that one out too. However, the week of Thanksgiving is profitable 87% of the time for an average return of 0.8% for that week. The week of Christmas, profitable a lot of the time, profitable 76% of the time for an average return of 0.31%. And then the last week of the year, the window dressing is profitable 3/4 of the time for an average return of 0.33%. So we see some really cool things. We see the week of Christmas, we see the last week of the year, we see the first week of the year, and we see the week of Thanksgiving, all profitable more than they're not, just like all the other weeks, but at the same time they have some decent profitability where we could actually take advantage of those setups. However, that week of Thanksgiving is kind of the big one. You're right close to 9 times out of 10, and at the same time your average return on the S&P 500 is 0.8%. So that's really, really big. This is definitely something that we could really, really, really take advantage of. Now, the most basic way to take advantage of this, obviously, you can't buy the S&P 500, but you can buy the stock SPY. SPY gives you the exact same price movement as the S&P 500, but just for 1/10 of the price. All right, so what you could do to take advantage of the fact that the week of Thanksgiving is profitable 87% of the time in the last 50 years for an average S&P 500 return of 0.8%, what you could do, one of the simple setups that you could do for this is you can, the week before, The Friday before the week of Thanksgiving, you can buy SPY before the market closes. So let's call it 3:59 p.m. Eastern time. And again, if you don't know how to buy and sell stock, you need to shut this video down and go back to some of our earlier lessons where we show how to do that. The Monday morning after the week of Thanksgiving at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, we want to sell those shares. And we want to rinse and repeat this every single year. So the question is, why are we doing it the Friday before and the Monday after? Well, if we get locked in the Friday before the week of Thanksgiving, we get to hear and see on the news, and everyone else, every investor out there gets to hear and see on the news all the week before Thanksgiving shopping that's going on. All of it. They get to hear about all the deals online. They get to hear about all that stuff. And they get excited. And they start buying stocks the next week on Monday. But we're already in there, so we get to ride their coattails. And then as the week goes on, people are not going to work. They have photographs, they have videos, they have news outlets at all the malls, and people are spending all this money. Rumors are coming out about how much people are spending on Amazon. And the market starts to drift very, very positively into Thanksgiving. And then anyone who's watching television the night of Thanksgiving or watching the news are seeing people beat the crap out of each other, run over each other, fight fisticuffs to get the TVs at Walmart that are really, really cheap. They get to see that and they go, wow, people are spending money. That's got to be good for those stocks. Then, when the market opens the next morning, every single CNBC, Bloomberg reporter is at a mall all over the country, and the malls are all jam-packed. And then you have Black Friday that's going on, and you're hearing about all these Black Friday sales. So all you're hearing about for that entire week, up to Black Friday is that people are just spending all their money on all their gifts. The market closes early. It closes at 1 o'clock on Black Friday, but you haven't sold yet. After that, you hear about all these people shopping, doing all this shopping that weekend. And by Monday, typically the market is a little bit higher and you can go ahead and sell on that Monday morning. So you buy the Friday before the week of Thanksgiving, you sell that Monday after. What can you expect? Well, you can expect to be right 87% of the time for 0.8% return on your money. Now, again, this is one of the simple ways that you could take advantage of knowing this information. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If not, I'll see you guys in the next video.